Bam.
Hello, this is Kurt Ellenberger, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Nice. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. I, uh, I, I love music, and we've been talking. I used to be a spy. I learned a lot about foreign policy because of that. We've been talking about Venezuela a whole lot the last
Oh,
48
wow.
hours. Yeah, and so it is way better. Not way better. It is very nice to have a change of pace and talk about music and things that are awesome, like music. And so I appreciate you coming on, and if nothing else, giving me a break from that stuff because life is supposed to be beautiful, and we have to talk about the hard things, but also we get to talk about the wonderful things. Things coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a line I've never heard before. I used to be a spy. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
pretty interesting.
I used to be a Captain Morgan model as well. So there you go. There's two
Oh,
two
wow.
lines.
Okay.
Hey, so I was listening to you talk on another episode, and you talked about Detroit and and the environment that allows for music to grow. Obviously there were a lot more gigs for a lot more people that put things onto things and made sounds, but still there's a ton of work out there. What is the how do you know when you're in an environment that's rich for music? And I'll say this to add: it's my hometown, Benicia, has a fantastic music scene. It's a tiny little town, 30,000 people. But you had a couple of interested barkeeps that said, hey, we're going to have music here. And it has become a magnet for players that want to play. They want to hang out with people that play. And I mean, for our little region, there's some real heavyweights out there that come in to, I mean, I could make a list, but who cares? It really is a scene there now. So how do you create a scene, a citywide scene where music and new ideas are being collided and music becomes an industry?
I think it has to do with the venues that are there. So what I've seen in a lot of cities, like my hometown of Windsor, Ontario, there were a handful of kind of dedicated, music people that owned restaurants or owned a bar or just put on concerts somewhere. And once you start doing that, it's all the musicians hear about it, and all of a sudden they're, hey, I want to play at this place. I want to play at this place. So there was a place in Windsor called the Serious Moonlight Cafe, and it just
Mhm.
became, named after the David Bowie um, tour, I think that's a lyric from his tune "Let's Dance."
Yeah.
Underneath the moonlight, the serious moonlight, and it just became a hub where all the musicians hung out after gigs, and we're all trying to play. So I think if you've got a half a dozen of those or two of those to start with, it just becomes a place for people to go where they know they're going to hear good music.
San Francisco's music scene died. Clubs are gone. They got some larger venues and everything, but that smaller club scene that nurtures young musicians is gone, man. And I don't know how you recover that. So yeah, we have some businesses that are, going to make it thrive, but I think it's harder than that. I mean, how do you? And it's not a bash on San Francisco. This is a thing. They used to have this
Yeah.
vibrant scene, and they don't anymore. So is that like Slim's was in business forever? It's gone, and it's been gone maybe 10 years now. How how do you bring a music scene back when it apparently is not possible with the businesses of the time?
Well, you got to bring the law and order back, I think. You have to
Mhm.
make it safe to go downtown. And I haven't been out San Francisco for a long time, but it sure what I read and see seems like it's just not doing well. So you've got to bring that back because the arts and the cultural stuff needs a safe, clean environment to bring people from the suburbs into the city. And if that's gone, you're going to have a real hard time, populating those clubs.
Yeah. The church scene has diminished tremendously too. I mean, how many incredible musicians like, oh, it came up in church, right? Like that was a regular thing. Is that still a thing?
I'm not sure. I'm not seeing that as much. I lived in Austria in 2023 for 4 months, and the church scene there is unbelievable. I mean,
Yes.
every one of these big cathedrals has Sunday afternoon concert series. You can see organists, you can see improvisers, you can see jazz, you can see choirs, all kinds of stuff. There was so much music in the churches that was most of it was free. So they've got a
Yeah.
really vibrant scene over there. It was almost too much. Like, well, my wife and I had to decide, okay, what are we going to see this week because there are four concerts. So I think that that's part of the scene over there too, is people don't live in their houses and their apartments. They live in the city. So that the city I was in was called Graz, and it's in southern Austria. It's where Schwarzenegger is from, and
Yes.
they they had three clubs that were doing jazz, and it's a city of
Oh,
maybe 400,000 people, and they're all
yeah.
doing well. And the same
Yeah.
with on the classical side. There was just so much going on because people are always in town. They're not driving into the city with their cars, parking, going to an event, and coming home. They're constantly in the city. So I think
Mm.
that's kind of missing here a little bit. I mean, the big cities have that, like New York and some of the other cities. But if you get to the smaller cities, it's just too much commute time, and so you don't get as much engagement from the suburbians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true. Graz, fun to say Graz. Love saying Graz and know exactly where it is. Vienna is a musical
Oh yeah.
place. And when I was there just for a short amount of time, a couple of times, right around the same time. And I'm like, I'm going to get over to Schubert. Look, I know to do these things, right? So I went over to Schubert's church, Schubert's Kirche, and saw wonderful choral. So I didn't realize, so my dad was a music guy, and I didn't realize how much of his thoughts and his playing had gotten, because we didn't really get along very well when he was alive. And turns out I love choir because of his
Wow.
exposing me to it. He took me, so our church was going to buy a pipe organ, which is a pretty big
Hmm.
endeavor, everybody. And he was the one guy that had the degree in music that played the pipe, that played how to play pipe organ, all that kind of thing. And so they sent him on a tour of churches that had pipe organs so he could get some insight. And so here I am, just a little peanut, and I'm going around, and he is talking to all of these guys, and he is explaining to me the pipe organ. And so I sort of learned out loud, and I love, love, love pipe organ because of it.
Yeah, it's a lovely instrument, and when you hear it in those big cathedrals in Vienna or anywhere in Europe, it's just absolutely moving.
Yeah, move it physically, like moving
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, physically, especially the bass, you can just kind of feel that
Oh,
rumble. It's
yeah,
like the original rock and roll instrument. They
it
had
really
volume.
is. Yeah, yeah. I liken it to a gorilla playing with kittens. Like when you put a symphony down there in the main floor, you're like, "Roar," and it's just like
It,
all it has to do is decide to just brrr, and it would,
yep.
you know, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's such a rich sound and such an amazing history. When you think of the technology too of building those things 500, 600 years ago, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just incredible.
It is incredible. It's it's mind blowing to think that there was someone down there pumping the bellows or
Yeah.
whatever they do. Probably a giant bladder of bladders, trying to hold
Yep.
all that air in. But
Yep.
yeah, it's a remarkable thing. Is that instrument still viable today?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, all the lot of cons like I said in Europe, especially just so many concerts because of the organ is just so powerful and so moving. So I think there's a lot of quasi professional players over there that are doing constantly doing concerts because especially in Europe again, people go to concerts and they go a lot. It's it's
Yeah.
it's what they do. They're not sitting in front of their screen at home like we do over here. They're going and doing those cultural things, and they're able to bring a big enough audience in to make it work.
My buddy Raul Vega was on my show the other day. He's from my hometown, also from Benicia, and he picked up a Grammy the other day. He works with Hans Zimmer.
Wow.
He's one of Hans's guys.
Wow.
And yeah, yeah, it's incredible, right? And he got this, he's like, I need, and I think you'll resonate with this based upon your background. It's like, I need to figure out the education side of this because I don't want this, I don't want that. And those were all the normal things you're supposed to want. But he wanted to compose. He was moved in this different direction, and it wasn't a
Uh-huh.
simple lot. You have to have someone say, "Here, kid, that's the path you want." So he started at a local community college, great plan, right? Solid music program. Still didn't have what he wanted, didn't have the proximity to Hollywood like he wanted because he wanted to do music and film. And so he came down here to Southern California, where I am now, and then over to Long Beach. And that turned into nobody in the music program. Somebody in his life said, "Oh, I know Hans Zimmer." And then he got in there, right? But not for that crazy path that's hard to repeat. He may not be sitting there with a Grammy. And by the way, never plays the piano anymore because he's got a job, and his job allows him to create in a way that scratches his creative playing itch. He'd love to have time to go out and play with his buddies out in clubs and stuff, but the reality is he's got a job. got things
Yeah.
to do. He's got work on top of it because like all musicians, he's got secondary and tertiary jobs. What are your thoughts on that path? Because I know that you had to figure your path out as well.
Well, I was always interested in more than just playing. I enjoyed it, and that's kind of my primary thing. But I always wanted to compose, and so I've been doing that since I was a teenager as well. So I always felt like I had this hat that I wear, and then this hat that I wear, and then there's the academic side where I write papers and do scholarship. And for me, that was really fun. I wouldn't have wanted to just do that one thing. So I understand that you can leave the playing. I had to leave the playing because I have a hand condition. But then other things opened up for me. So I think if you've got that creative itch and you're putting it into different areas, you're going to find some success in those areas.
When you talk about writing academic papers about writing things, here's the rules, everybody. You're going to add to, you're going to dissent from, or create something. Where's your
hmm
sweet spot? Where's your sweet
I,
spot in that
I
world?
I always, or what I really like is writing about topics that are kind of interesting, maybe a little bit quirky, that no one else
Mm,
has kind of addressed in the same way, and bringing that to a general audience. So bringing some disciplinary stuff from music or physics or acoustics, and bringing that to an interested general audience and making it understandable. To me, that's kind of where I found my sweet spot.
how did you figure that sweet spot out, though? I mean, let's not gloss over the challenge of actually finding the sweet spot and making it work for you.
Well, really what it was my students asking me questions. And
Mm,
because they're not professional musicians, they ask kind of questions that you think, hey, wait a minute, why don't I know the answer to that question? So, for
right.
example, for years I had students asking me, why does Christmas music sound so jazzy? And so I
Mm,
would I would I would answer, in class, but then I thought, that's a really good question. Why don't I write a paper? Why don't I do the research on it and write a paper about it? So
yeah.
that's what I did. I said, why is it so jazzy? Right. So a lot of times it's students asking questions. So why is a minor chord sad? What is it about the
Yeah.
minor chord that makes it
Yeah.
sad? So,
Yeah.
I get these prompts from amateurs or not even musicians who just ask obvious questions that maybe professionals wouldn't ask without that prompt, right? You just assume, oh, a minor chord's kind of sad. That's the way it is. Well, why? So a lot
Uh,
of stuff believe it or not, I got from my students just feeding me these questions, and then I decided, yeah, that's a damn good question. I'm going to do some research on it and write a paper on it.
that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah, because it's easy to say like, "Oh, I just do this," but yeah, there's a process to getting there, and you just explain that in such a great way. I love that. When you think about um, why did Christmas songs sound so jazzy? Like, where do you start with that though? Like, I mean, you go look up Burl Ives music and or something, or what do you do?
Well, when they first asked me that, I gave them a short explanation in class based on, kind of what I knew about the history of the music, but I didn't have specific dates and composers and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So when I decided to write the paper, that's when I dug into it and said, okay, who wrote all this Christmas music? When did it start
Yeah.
showing up? Who are these people? Well, it turns out that they are the same people that wrote for Broadway and
Mm.
Tin Pan Alley. So they're classically trained to some degree composers, a lot of them of Eastern European Jewish heritage who were
Hmm.
writing for Tin Pan Alley, but then started writing for Broadway. And so the Broadway style in the 30s and 40s was with rich harmonies, a lot of stuff taken from classical music and kind of brought into Broadway. Well, who did the jazz players use? Well, the
Yeah.
Broadway songbook is really important for jazz, especially in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. They were playing all these tunes that came from those musicals, by giving them a jazz treatment. So the reason it sounds jazzy is because um, both jazz and that Christmas music came up in that Broadway songbook era, and which makes it jazzy, even though it's not jazzy. It's jazzy because the jazz musicians played those tunes in a jazz interpretation. So, and when you look at those composers, Yeah, that's who they all were. They were Broadway composers writing in that Broadway style. And indeed, even if you look at something like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, it's like a claymation Broadway play. You have these little
Yeah.
solo arias, you have these duets that happen. It's so modeled after Broadway. It's hard to not see it once you've seen it.
Yeah, that's funny. I had a similar question I asked myself, and because we live in a modern time, you can do some of this yourself. And I've always thought 100% for sure the WKRP theme was written by a guy who writes jingles. And so I was
Oh,
finally able to look it up, right? And I'm like, I'll be damned. Sure enough, that guy was a professional jingle writer, and obviously he moonlights as someone who writes other things. Like, hey, Bob, probably a Jewish guy, can you write this thing? And he did. And boy, that song is sticky, sticky.
man, yeah, I haven't heard that term for probably since I was a teenager when I watched the show, but immediately I've got the tune WKRP in Cincinnati,
Yeah,
right?
right, right.
Yeah,
Town to town, up and
it's
down the
just
down.
it's just
Yeah.
stuck in there. That's hilarious.
Yeah. 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 Oh, you know what I love to ask about, especially guys that play keys. Okay, so Daryl Hall and John Oates have a song called "Man Eater," right?
Hmm.
And in that song, for the first, oh, I don't know, let's say dozen measures, it's fairly normal. But then, it's like Daryl takes his change purse out and sits it on one key on the keyboard, and it just goes. Doo. The rest, and I'm not saying it's an accident; it's a design, but it's a long note that lasts maybe after the first chorus. The rest of the song, it's there, just haunting you, and
Really,
it's
I
yeah,
can't.
yeah.
I'm trying to
Once
hear
you
it.
yeah, once you hear it, you'll never unhear it. It's one of those things you're like, I'll be damned. And I think that and here's the thing I wanted is like why, right? So I think the purpose of that note, especially once you're conscious and you hear it, it's to create some danger. And because it's this man eater woman, and it just adds a layer of texture that I just think it's a brilliant hunk of genius. And that's why I like to bring it up with musicians, especially keyboard players. When you have this thing just whole noted across the entire score, it just is relentless. And I love it. It's one of my favorite notes in all of music.
Huh, that's I'll have to listen for it because I'm picking up the that sax solo, the da da, and then it echoes,
Hmm.
da da, and then that kind of
Yeah.
builds up in the tune, and then of course
Hmm.
the chorus is just so great. But I don't remember that. But yeah, a one single note playing all the way through is kind of a little bit
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of poking you.
That's exactly what it does. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
so you got to get through, like, the song has to be set up. And I think it's after the first time they run through the chorus, and you'll hear it later on. You're like, oh, it's in there a couple of times, but it's just like, like a half note or maybe a full note, whatever. But then it goes away. But then once it comes back, it's relentless and it does not stop. No one lifts a
Wow.
finger. So whoever, yeah, it's a really neat
Uh,
thing. Anyhow, so when you think about like the genius in that move, I think that's genius, right there, because you'll I know you'll hear it, but once you hear it, it's like, oh god,
yeah.
it does it. It's unrelenting.
Yeah, yeah. So, we call that kind of musical text painting, where you're doing
Mm,
something musical that paints what the text or the vibe of the tune has, and it can work really, really well. Like, for example, Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, right?
mhm,
It starts with just the two flutes or the recorders, and then it adds the guitar, then it adds the voice, and then it adds a bit of keys, then it adds more keys, and then the bass comes in, and then the drums come in. It's the whole tune is a stairway of additive parts, and
love it.
that helps to paint the tune, even though you don't know it, right? You just
Right.
know something about this tune clicks with the lyrics and the story that it's telling.
When you play out live, especially, you want to have a dynamic in the song. You want to slow it down, you want to speed it up, you want to do all of these things within 2.5, 3.5 minutes or whatever it is. How do you make those decisions? And when you decide to break those rules, like have one long note like Man Eater has or whatever it is, how do you make those decisions? Is this like a feel thing? Is it a theory thing? How do
I
how do those decisions happen?
I think it's got to be a feel thing. I don't think you can kind of manhandle your way into creating something like that. I mean, when they're going into the studio, like Hall and Oates, they've got their band there. They've come in probably with a sketch of the tune, or like David Bowie comes in, he's got this tune, but then then they start playing and the
Mhm.
drummer does something. Like they're not telling him, I want this exact beat. All the studio players are contributing stuff to it, and the leaders are going, nah, give me more of this. No, give me more of that. So I imagine maybe a keyboard player just hitting this note and they're saying, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Hold it. Or maybe it's a mistake. Maybe they're playing this note and
Yeah.
didn't realize they were holding it. But then when you listen to it, you're thinking, hey, that sounds pretty cool. So I think part of what happens in the studio that people aren't aware of is that there's so much collaboration when these artists go in. They generally don't have the perfect finished version of the tune there. They have a
Mhm.
sketch and then they bring a ton of musicians in and then the producers say, oh, let's try this chord there, or let's do this, or let's try that. So the finished product is really a much more collaborative effort than you would think that it's the David Bowie tune, so he came in with everything and gave them everything. That's just not how it happens. So like for
Mhm.
example, his guitar player, Carlos Alamar, I think that's his last name, um,
Mhm.
on the Fame track. So there's got to be about 8 guitar tracks on that tune. If you listen, this is another thing to listen to. So if you listen to that tune Fame, there is so much guitar on there. And Bowie said, the tune is so much his that he gave the guitarist a writing credit for it because he added so much to it. So that doesn't always happen, but that probably made that guitarist a millionaire.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. You think
Yeah,
about that. When you work with David Bowie, you might go in the studio and have something that accidentally makes you a millionaire. It just
yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Listen to the
to earn the
guitar.
right to be in there is something though, but yeah.
That's yeah. But then to go in there and just be playing this guitar part that kind of makes the tune, and it's just such a groove. So next time you listen to that tune, or next time it comes on, see if you can count at the beginning. Okay, how many guitar parts are there in this?
Yeah.
There's got to be about 7, maybe
Right.
8. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. My buddy Jay Moore just had dang it, Billy Gibbons on his show.
Okay.
And it's Billy is such an insightful person and just has a way of speaking. Is it because of the frontmen? They just have words, or how do these guys have so much talent and then they sit down in a chair and you just cannot stop listening to what they have to say?
Yeah, I don't know. Some of them I think are just born for the stage. They're
Mm,
just got that personality to be the front man, and other people just don't. And you can see bands that are really successful have that front man personality who's good on stage and in interviews, right? Some of them don't.
yeah.
Like the Beatles were great at that. They were just natural. They had that kind of ironic humor that they would use and that they could just come up with great lines to feed back to these reporters. It wasn't coached. They were really good at it. But then you think, well, are others like that? And how much did that contribute to their acceptance and their success? So I think it's finding
Yeah.
those kind of people that have that extrovert vibe. Like Bowie was fantastic with that too. He was interviews. He was just cordial, affable, friendly, humorous. I don't know if you can turn someone who's not like that into that, if you try, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's very tough. You got to be comfortable making mistakes, also comfortable saying the same damn thing over and over again, because once
Yep.
your media training is done, it's like, here's what we're saying this album, and you're going to say that 500 times. And just like playing that song that you hate playing, you got to do it. And you got to do the smile on your face.
Yep, yep. And I guess you just got to realize, if you're the Rolling Stones and you're playing whatever tune, and it's the millionth time you've played it, that's
Mm,
one of the tunes that bought the mansions for you. So,
yeah.
hopefully you can be grateful for that and not get sick of it.
Hopefully. Yeah. Is that a muscle you have to build up?
I would think so. I mean, even when I was doing, gig work, which is doing a lot of covers, so you're playing the same kind of tunes over and over again.
Mhm. Yep.
It does really wear on you after a while. You can see by the end of a night, you think, oh man, we played that same set again, and you
Yeah.
have to somehow make it seem that you're excited about it with the audience, so the audience kind of gets that energy from it, even when you're sick of it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I saw Eddie Money at just a small place, and he played 3 times. He played Two Tickets to Paradise because that's what the audience wanted, and he was inclined to give it to us that night.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, if the crowd loves it, and this is a small place, and so the next night you might play it 3 times again, and maybe he figured out that 3 times was like that's the number. That'll blow the roof off this place. Who cares, right? I
That's
get to do this, you know?
so was he live? Because what I'm thinking of
Yeah,
right away
yeah.
is that there's so many bands. Like I saw David Cross from King Crimson. He was the guitar
Mhm.
player or the violinist in King Crimson, and he had kind of an all-star band. And I noticed something different from all of the other concerts I've been seeing in the last decade is that they were not playing to a click track.
Mm,
So it's hard. So they were live, they were stretching some stuff out, there was communication on stage, but pretty
yeah,
much every other band I've seen that's kind of touring and big, like someone like Eddie Money, has multi-track keyboards that are playing with the band to fill the
yeah,
sound out, and they can't veer from the set list because everything is computerized. So that's why I asked. I
yeah,
know it's live, but there's so many bands that are doing, or all of them really, are playing along with a click track. Everything is computerized. The lights are controlled by the computer. The
This is
flares and
probably
the.
20 years ago too, though.
Okay, so he
So,
was live
you
then.
know,
Yeah, so you could do that.
yeah, and he had a band with him, and it was great, man. It was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, did they have and this is really a big bar, is what this was. This
Yeah.
wasn't like a giant venue. So, but yeah, you're right. Like, if you go and you play the Sphere, you are locked into that show. You can
Yes.
tinker with it before the show, but once it happens, you're not doing karaoke, but you are locked into a very specific thing.
Well, you're do there in some cases they are actually doing karaoke. I've seen film of it was David Lee Roth. He was
Mm,
just on tour and he stopped singing, but the singing goes on.
yeah,
And it's kind of
yeah.
embarrassing. When you think back, like, yeah, you'll remember this early 90s, that band
Mhm.
Milli Vanilli
Milli Vanilli, yeah,
that
yeah,
got busted. They weren't the singers on their album even, but they won a
yeah,
Grammy for it. And
yeah,
sadly, I think one of them, when it was found out that they were frauds, one of them killed himself in LA, I believe. And
yeah.
now everybody's doing halfway karaoke.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I think it was that Rob Lightus guy, and he also had a drug
Yeah,
thing that was going
yeah,
on.
yeah.
So I think he just and it wasn't right away, but you know, you look back, it wasn't all that long afterwards. Yeah, it's interesting. I saw the Stones live at
Hmm.
SoFi, and they had like this is when Mick takes a break and gets his vitamin B12 shot and Red Bull or whatever, and because these guys are old, everybody. And look,
Yeah.
no knock on any band that's trying to put on a show in a gigantic stadium like that. And so,
Hmm.
but they had focused on Mick's hands, and he wasn't playing what was coming out of the thing. Sometimes he wasn't even touching the guitar. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying he doesn't play, but there's help, and that is a modern realization about music. So my preference is to go to smaller venues where you're going to see a real person really doing the thing and making mistakes. The Stones
Yeah.
can't make mistakes like every other band can because they got a requirement to do the right thing every single time, and they're ancient. But yeah, that's my preference is to see smaller venues. I
Me
still want
me
to see the
too.
big bands, but yeah.
Yeah, me too. There's several small venues here in town,
Mm,
maybe 300, 400 people. And
mhm.
it's just great. Some of them even smaller, maybe 150. And I just love that. I mean, I'll do the big arena show once in a while if it's a big,
Sure,
I've seen Rammstein a couple of times just because
I
that
love it.
that that presentation is just so over the top. But I
Sure.
like the smaller settings myself too.
Do you have a favorite venue, like big venue, that you like to go to?
Big venue. I not really. Pine Knob is pretty cool, but I haven't been there for a
Mhm.
long time. That's outside of
Yeah,
Detroit. Um, yeah, like I said, I'm mostly going to the smaller venues where I feel like it's just more intimate. You're close to the musicians. You're kind of feeling the energy off the stage, rather than being 400 feet away and you kind of
yeah.
see little people on the stage.
I will say that there are certain acts, certain performers that can pull off the intimacy of a giant place. It's
Hmm.
it's not common, but I saw Charlie Wilson play at, well, first off, the Hollywood Bowl is my
Oh
favorite
yeah,
venue
I've
because
never
that's
been.
just a, oh, it's so,
That's
well, come out to
beautiful.
California and we'll go. And so, anybody know Charlie Wilson is a famous musician from a big band. He's been a funk band, right? But he did everything. His brothers are dead from drugs. He almost died. He lived in a gutter, and so he has what I call a revival in the middle of his thing, as he thanks God for his survival because he was sleeping in gutters, like
Oh,
actually sleeping in gutters. And so he is as joyful as he can be about being alive, and he gets people up. Everybody stand like it's like you're in church, man. Put your arm around that dude next to you and then look at your lady. And then he sings to the lady. He's like, I'm going to steal you away from your man. And then you're like, oh man, we got had, and
that's
he,
pretty good.
it's wonderful. Yeah. It's so good. And you just have the best time. And oh, gosh, I love it. Yeah. But, those smaller intimate venues are fantastic as well. I mean, the best way to see the Stone Temple Pilots is to see a cover band because you're never going to see Scott Weiland again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Is music still getting better?
Boy, that's a
Mhm.
tough question.
Yeah.
Depends on the style too, I think. I think classical music has kind of settled into a groove where it's a lot of it is minimalistic and a lot of the other stuff doesn't really get played as much, which I don't
Okay.
know if that's good or bad. In
Okay.
pop music, what's weird about pop music is that my students over the years, they listen to their own contemporary music, but they are also listening to 70s, 80s, 60s classic rock. They know all of that stuff, which is weird. So it's
Mhm.
almost like that hit a high point that generations coming afterwards are kind of cluing into. So their stuff is still moving, doing, whatever style it is, but they're also really tapped into the stuff that we grew up with. Because
Mhm.
I think because it was all so good, it was just a golden era there from 60s, 70s, 80s into the 90s. And I think a lot of that continues today with bands that are kind of using that as a basis and then moving forward from there.
Yeah.
So,
But you said 60s, 70s, 80s, that's a lot of tumult in the popular culture in terms of music. There's a lot of change in there. It was
oh
you know, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's almost every 5 years you've got a different style, right?
Hmm.
Because there's so many people who had the time and inclination and energy to form bands. So you get the speed of the change is just unbelievable. So if you think like classical music, for example, the Baroque era lasted 120 years, something like that, before the
Hmm.
style really changed. The classical era lasted maybe 75 years, then the
Hmm.
Romantic era, another 75 years. Then you get to popular music like jazz. You got Dixieland for maybe 20 years, then
Yeah.
bebop for maybe 5, 6 years, and then bebop morphs into something else, hard bop, and then that's there for maybe 8, 9 years. Then there's cool jazz, and the same thing happened in pop music. It's just
Yeah.
so, the blues stuff started happening. Then you got the rockabilly in the 50s and Elvis and all that, and boom, then you've got doo-wop, and then that phases out after a few years. Then the Motown stuff comes in, then that's
Yeah.
done, and then you've got the hard rock stuff, and then you've got more of the yacht rock starts to show up, like Hall and Oates and that kind of play. Then there's disco, and that's in and out within a few years. So it's really astonishing how quickly those styles emerge and then are tossed away. Like punk
Yeah.
rock lasted for maybe a year. I mean, the
Yeah.
the you know,
Short.
the Sex Pistols were 9 months. That's it.
Yeah.
And then
One
it
album.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Even the Clash, they were prolific, but 77 to 82, something like that.
yeah,
They were even a
yeah,
band.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. It's
then
kind of
they
amazing.
went and did whatever like always they did whatever they wanted when they broke up, and God, what a collection of talent in that band. Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of those tunes are just, that Rock the
Yeah.
Casbah is just an anthem of the 80s. And
Yeah.
it's a great tune.
Yeah. Yeah. In the 80s, you look at the top 10, top 40, it is crowded with different stuff. Peter Gabriel, Tina Turner. Like, wow,
Yep.
that's as different as it gets. By the way, the 80s is the emergence of the female lead. as well, female bands and everything. And that, not that it didn't exist before, but it became fully mainstream in the 80s. That was another big change.
Yeah, before that was mostly singers, right? They're like,
Right.
leading the group. Ella Fitzgerald, for example, as a jazz singer,
Yeah.
they were there, but it wasn't the full band, and they weren't writing their own tunes. That's the other thing
Yeah.
that changes. These are our own tunes, although some of those bands, like the who was it, the Bangles, um,
Hmm.
I think Prince wrote some of their tunes, so they were pretty involved
Hmm.
with him. But they also wrote their own tunes. So
Yeah. 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 I saw Susanna Hoff. She was at an awards show at NAMM, and she was giving out one of the big awards. And she was just wonderful, because she's in a room full of her peers. These are music
uh-huh.
people or music industry people. And she just, you could tell she wanted to be there and was tickled to put this person into the Hall of Fame. And I
Uh-huh.
forget who she was doing it. It might have been Jackson Brown, but it was awesome watching her do that and get to do that. And here's this girl who's look, obviously gorgeous, but she's a lead singer in a female pop band that has maybe two songs people can mention. And that
Yeah.
there she is standing there inducting somebody that she reveres into this Hall of Fame. I thought, what a wonderful experience. Like, if you could drop a map and say, hey, Kurt and Pete are going to start a band. And then 40 years from now, one of us is going to be on stage inducting, we'll just say Jackson Brown is the person, Jackson Brown into the NAMM Hall of Fame. We would take every bit of that and say, wow, I can't wait for this journey to happen. Even if
Oh
he's not
yeah.
like and I'm not saying that their band wasn't, the Bengals wasn't great, but if you said, "Oh, it's the Bengals, they're a pop band and they're around for 5 minutes," right? Like, you could be cynical like that, but the treasures that she's collected over the years, it's got to be remarkable.
Oh yeah, and the ancillary projects that she was certainly involved in too, right? They don't just disappear and go home
Hmm.
and live a quiet life. They're probably involved in producing other groups or managing other groups or mentoring people. Once you hit that level of, okay, it's just another Manic Monday, which was a Prince
Hmm.
tune.
Right?
Once you hit that level, it's like, you don't just fade into the background. You're in the business somehow, right? Just
Yeah.
like a Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Who
Same
would
kind
have
of
thought
thing.
the amount of money he would make on doing the Simpsons theme song? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
how much, how many times has someone cut a check? I'm fascinated by this, man. So, like, you think about how many places in the world the Simpsons is playing on right now. Like, it must play 24/7 somewhere in the world. Who is keeping track of that, especially before computers? And who is writing the checks? Like, oh my God, the physical, I mean, just, and then that's Danny Elfman. Now do Prince, now do Paul McCartney. Someone's out there just frantically signing their name to it is an amazing,
So
and then transacting all of that stuff. It blows my mind.
yeah, so I can tell you how that works. So
Please.
all of these different venues, like a university theater, any of the performance venues, at the end of the year, they send everything that they played to ASCAP, which is the American Society for Composers, Authors, and Publishers. And they do kind of a survey of, wow, we found this person's piece got played, 8,000 times. Okay, now we're going to send them a royalty check based on that. So all of the venues are paying to be able to play live music, and that goes back to the 30s when the jukeboxes started. Musicians complained saying, "Well, I'm on this record." And they're playing it in this restaurant, and I'm not making money on it. So they went on strike in the 40s, and the deal was that what they struck was that when you sell a record, a certain amount of that goes to the musicians union,
Mhm.
and so they're going to then kick that money back to the musicians. So it's complicated, but it's actually done as you described. They're logging how many times all these pieces were played, and then they make a calculation based on how many times it probably was played that they didn't know about, right?
Yeah.
And then that's
Yeah.
where they get their royalty checks from.
And I know today there's a lot of robots that do this work, but someone had to go out and check on the accounting of the accounting, because the artist is going to say, no way that's true. And he's got to have, or she's got to have someone to be their advocate. And so there must be a check within that system as well to say, no, no, we went out. And, yeah.
Yeah, well, they send it in. So those
Okay.
places they log all of that stuff and they send it in.
But who
And then
compels that behavior?
It's the licensing, so they're
Okay,
paying a fee to be able to play this music.
gotcha.
So they're under
Okay,
an agreement with them, so that there is acknowledgement of, hey, we're playing your music. We think you should get paid, and that's the thing
right.
that goes back to that strike in the 40s, right? So
Hmm.
we're still
Hmm.
living with that with those laws.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
You it is kind of cool. And there's I learned this at NAM as well, that there are companies, I think Jay-Z runs one of them, where it's like, hey, you've got a massive catalog. Let us handle all of that business stuff for you. They'll take their little bit, you've got less to worry about, and they go out and they manage catalogs and they enforce things and they, it's an amazing sub genre where, and it's all filled full of musicians working in there, because they're
Yep.
like, hey, I got this gig. It's in music, but and then all of a sudden they become this person that is good at that and they rise up. And so they're a musician at heart, but professionally they're someone who works in an office.
Yeah, managing those portfolios, which is really where the real money is, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 That's right. You can end up in some small sub industries inside of music and just be blown away, like the person who actually makes reeds by hand or whatever, in some cases.
Yep.
And the expertise involved, or like the luthiers who just repair incredible guitars. Like, this has to be fixed, but you smashed it into 100 pieces. It has to be fixed, and then they do. I mean, they have a reputation too. Like, if Willie Nelson and Trigger have a bad day, there's
Yep.
only a couple of people, and they know exactly who those people are, and they get on an airplane and they come fix Trigger.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
crazy when you think about all that. A funny story that you may not know about is, have you ever heard of Bowie bonds?
No. Uh-uh.
So David Bowie had this idea that he was gonna sell the rights to his catalog as a bond, and he raised $30 million. I think it's 30
Clever.
million. They didn't ever say the number, but it was kind of rumored. I think it was about 30
Yeah.
million dollars. So he got $30 million, and they got his catalog up until the time of his death, and then it reverted back to his family.
Wow.
So I
Yeah.
mean, these are the kind of weird things happening behind the scenes. Then someone with a real business savvy like Bowie clearly had, was able
Yeah.
to raise an enormous amount of funds
Hmm.
based on someone else getting the royalties for his tunes.
Yeah. Tommy McElroy, he's a very famous producer. He and his buddy Denny invented En Vogue, right? So they've made a lot of money for themselves. But he leases his, at least at the time when we talked to him, he leases his catalog for a defined amount of time. Go ahead,
Oh, really?
put it
Okay.
put it to work, but I'll get it back in a little bit. And you can renew the lease and all that, but he's in negotiated position where he can constantly assess the value. Now there's risk in that, hey, it may not be as valuable next time,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's more business savvy. Like, I don't need to sell this forever. I can just let you use it for a while. And within
Yeah.
there, everybody, there's rules, what you can and can't do, and they agree
Yeah.
on it in the lease. Amazing.
It's pretty cool to see that some of that backroom stuff going on that the early bands just had no clue about. Like the Beatles really got screwed over because they just didn't really have that business savvy. So there
Right.
were a lot of people that took advantage of them, and it ended up that Michael Jackson eventually owned pretty much their entire catalog,
Yeah.
which
And
is
that
weird.
caused a rift between those guys. It's like, hey,
Yep.
just sell me the catalog, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Ah, it's it's a complicated world. So if you just want to be a regular musician, you want to go out and maybe you pick up some gigs, you're still going to go be an accountant. Maybe one day the music industry takes over your life and you go on the road. But most everybody is going to be more of the person I'm describing, right? They're going to be in a cover band, or they're in three different bands, and sometimes the third band plays, sometimes it doesn't. Is that enough? Is that enough just to build like a little mini musical life?
It is. I mean, if you don't mind the lifestyle, I mean,
Hmm.
that's kind of the problem is you can do it, and you can patch together a halfway decent living where you've got a house, and maybe your wife is a nurse, so that brings some income in or something like that. You can do it, but it's the lifestyle that's difficult, because you're always working when everyone else is relaxing, right? On a Friday night, you're going to work. It's just not
Yeah.
conducive to family life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, right? If you're young, it's okay. If you're
Yeah.
older and you're like, I get to do what I want, and then you do that. But can you make a living doing that? Like if you're a higher tier person who does gigs like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did for up until I was about 27. I made
Mm,
a pretty good living just putting together gigs. But it's again that lifestyle. I started to think, can I be doing this when I'm 40? I don't really see
yeah.
I don't really want to be doing this. It's been fun. And that's when I went back to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I don't know what you see, and especially when you're talking about like educating students and everything, if you're going to be an act or if you're going to be in an act, you need to have some kind of business chops these days. Otherwise, that industry will absolutely exploit you and you will be begging to be exploited. So you can musicians can cry all they want about what happened to them, but they all entered into these contracts, right? And so
Yep.
is that improved at all?
I think just because they know the dangers, I think it's
Yeah.
improved. That it's
Okay.
it's no longer the starry-eyed four boys from Liverpool who are just going to sign the contract right away.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think people are aware of it. The stories of bands getting a first album and having it a million seller and hardly making any money for it, and then
Yeah.
then they start to be able to negotiate on their second, third, fourth albums, right? If they
Yeah.
can keep the hits up, like Led Zeppelin, for example.
Sure.
They were so big by their fourth album that when Atlantic told them we want to release Stairway to Heaven as a single, Zeppelin said no, and that
Yeah.
was one of the first times that the band had enough power to override the record label. They said no, if you want Stairway to Heaven, you have to buy the whole album. So
Yeah.
but it takes a while for a band to get that kind of power.
Yeah, the story I love about that is, when Willie Nelson finally, after a long time, had the ability to say, "This is my contract, you guys can sign it or not," and then he comes back with "Redheaded Stranger," and then the label's like, "Is this a demo? Selfish Stark, not a lot there." "Nope, that's the album. Release it." "Well, we're not gonna do that." And he's like, "Check the contract." Like, God damn it, and it turned out, in this case, because it doesn't always work that way, but in this case, it was a smash, and it's still a smash. What a great album that
Yeah,
album is.
yeah, yeah. He's really something, and he's still around. It's just
I
amazing.
know.
Still touring, I think, too.
Crazy. Yeah. Paul is gone. Bobby's gone. Like all these people in his band, and he's just compelled. He's probably going to die on a tour bus one day.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
Pretty
But that's
interesting.
yeah. It is Frankie Valley. He's still out there.
Yeah, I
Um,
saw his name on a roster somewhere too.
yeah.
I wonder if he can still do all that falsetto.
I don't know. Does he? Does he really do it, or does he
Yeah,
perform the act of doing it?
yeah. Because that goes. By the time you're
It
50
does.
or 60, that voice ages with everything else in the body too. So
Yeah. I remember towards the end of Tony Bennett's life. He sang in San Francisco at the World Series, but he had to walk across the field before he sang, and that kind of gassed him out to where he didn't have the heart and lung
yeah,
capacity to really have a
yeah,
strong voice. But if you just had him up on an elevator and stand by a piano and amplify him, no problem. He could do it
yeah,
right deep into his life. So I mean, if you're going to have a strong diaphragm, it's those guys.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I've kind of run you through a whole mess of questions. What do you want to talk about now that we're on
Oh,
towards the end of it?
you know what? I just love talking about music. So,
Yeah,
if it's something I fell in love with as a teenager, and I've devoted my life to it, and I just find it endlessly fascinating to just the stories about music, the different
yeah,
bands, what they contributed, the behind the scenes stuff. I could talk about it all day.
yeah. Me too. There are so many people that work in the music industry because I go to NAM, and so I get to know these people, and they just do very specific things, and it may not have anything to do with music itself. It's all the whole industry is just packed full of wonderful people doing these things and trying to help. And I figured out a way to help musicians, whatever that thing is, whether they're producing or on the business side. It is, like if you want to do PR, there are people that are elite in the
Yep,
music industry at doing PR, and you should know
yep.
who they are. It's wonderful.
And when you think of the technology too, I think that's something that people don't think about. Was that in the 20s, they didn't have microphones yet,
Yeah.
right? All so there
Yeah.
all of this all of this technology that was invented because musicians needed, well, broadcast needed it too, but musicians needed it. They started to need to mic their
Yeah.
amplifier, or they needed an amplifier to play a bigger room. Then they were playing bigger stadiums, so they needed all of that. Then they needed, well, we've got a keyboard in the studio, but we don't have one on stage. What do we do?
Hmm.
Well, we've got this little portable organ, but that's hard to move. So that prompted someone, well, maybe we can make this electronically. And then you get
Yeah.
synthesizers and light shows and all that stuff, right? Plus tour buses and managers and people doing food and booking
Yeah.
the rooms where they're going to stay. All that stuff is an industry that just sprang up out of demand by the music industry, which was growing at the time from the early 1900s on.
My buddy Scott, rest his soul, he grew up as a punk rock kid in my hometown, and among others, Green Day came through because he's part of the Gilman scene out in Berkeley. And because he knew Green Day from like day one, and they all skated and they all did punk, he was on their tour, and he came up on the backstage side of things. So here's this musician guy, who's needed to work, and those guys hired their friend, and he worked with them for a long time. And he was the guy that made sure like all of the backstage stuff that involved the artist was perfect. He
Okay.
worked with the Eagles for a while too, so that when Joe Walsh wanted pants number 5 to put on that night, and that was going to make it, that they were right there within arm's reach, that he didn't have to do anything else. And you think about the amount of miles he walked backstage, the amount of people he knew in Oklahoma City, in Vienna, wherever they
Yeah.
went. He had to know how to get the right couch, the right thing at the right time, and there was no compromise. You had to be great
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah.
And
And
it's high pressure. Oh my God, it's high pressure.
yeah, and the M&Ms without the brown ones or whatever it was.
For sure. Yeah. All that. Yeah. And he's the guy accounting for all that. He's like, there's absolutely, I have a bag of brown M&Ms right here that I
Yeah.
can put in or take out depending
Yeah.
on the artist's whim. And the thing he explained was like someone like Mariah Carey's like, I need the room to be 72 degrees at this level of humidity with these flowers. That sounds like a prima donna. And she is, right? She
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But she is the one that has the entire weight of that concert on her back. She
Yep.
has to be physically perfect every single night. She's got to do it night after night. And so if that's what it takes, that is a small
Yep.
ask when you see it from her point of view.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. What do you listen to, and how do you listen to music now?
I tend to listen mostly just kind of in the house. I've got the whole house wired up, so I've got
Mhm.
tunes playing, various all kinds of stuff. I have a really varied list of that I listen to. So I'll go from modern jazz like the Bad Plus or Brad Meldau, and then the next
Mhm.
tune come on will be Wang Chung.
Yes.
I'm just kind of all over the place. And then there's
Yeah.
classical music. So I the only music that I don't listen to a lot, or I don't really listen to, is I don't listen to country, and I can't kind of break the code for rap. But everything
Okay.
else,
Okay.
everything from jazz to heavy metal, I'm kind of into.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, I can do country, but I like older, like more outlaw country is more my era, a genre of country that I like. The original Hank Williams stuff is a little bit too popish for me, although I love
Hmm.
the songs. So if someone else does them, I probably like it. But
Yeah. I,
the the snap track modern country that's very hip
yeah.
hoppy. I can't. It's I like plenty of pop music things, but I have a point where I'm like, that's just too poppy.
Too
I
far.
just
Yeah.
can't do it. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree. I like some of the older stuff, Johnny Cash. There's an
sure.
authenticity there, but I kind of feel like the newer stuff is, it's phoned in. It's kind of canned, very formulaic.
Yeah,
You can almost see the word hook coming a mile down the street.
a mile down the street.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. What is it? Because I think that's the thing that Johnny has in spades. Like that's why he's always was great. Was he was 100% believable.
yep,
you know and what was it about him that made, because he shows up like that, he can't help but
yeah.
be that thing.
Yeah, I think it was just he was so autobiographical. It wasn't. It's like he really embodied his life and his life story into the music, which is hard to do because you run out of stories after a while. but he didn't seem to do that. He seemed to constantly have another story to tell that seemed to me anyway to be related to his own life and his own path.
Yeah. He's almost like an anthropologist,
Yeah, yeah.
you
And I
know?
mean, Bowie kind of does that too, but
Yeah.
he's making up characters. He wasn't
Yeah.
Ziggy Stardust, right? He wasn't the Thin White Duke, but he assumed those personas, I think, to give him more material, to give him more stories to tell from that perspective.
Yeah.
But you know, that wasn't really his life story.
Right.
But I think
Right.
with Cash, it was.
Yeah. I mean, he, writes Worried Man because he loves going to Jamaica and lives there sometimes and he meets real people, but he can still see them,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Or like the
Yeah.
Nine Inch Nails thing at the end. Like, wow,
Ooh, wow.
that's just
Yeah.
that's heavy.
It is. Yeah. Is that him or is that Rick Rubin or is that both? Like, how did they figure out? They obviously don't know how it's going to come out, but when you hear those lyrics spoken from his specific
Ooh,
Johnny Cash point of view,
yeah, yeah. I get shivers just thinking about it.
yeah,
It's some of that music that I love, but I really have to not listen to very often because it's just so heavy.
yeah,
You know,
it is
I feel
heavy.
like yeah, it's just like oh, okay, I can do it. It's like the composer Mahler. I love it, but boy, it's got
Mm,
to be kind of a okay, this is going to be really emotional and really heavy, and I need to be prepared for it. And it's not something I can just have on and casually listen to. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. You know
Sure.
who else did that in real life? It wasn't a song, but it's the same thing. Was Mickey Mantle, on his deathbed saying, "Don't be like me. Don't don't
Ooh, I
do
didn't
what I
know that.
did." Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
He's like, I wasted my talent. I wasted things, and
Oh,
yeah,
ugh.
crazy, right?
That's not what you want to say in your last breath.
I know, but
Yeah.
that's and I'm saying on his deathbed. I don't know exactly when, but it was in that 1995 year, his last year of his life, and he's like, "Hey,
Uh-huh.
I know I'm a hero and an icon, so let me tell you this," you know, and
Wow. Brutal.
yeah,
Brutal honesty.
right. So a couple years later, Johnny sings a version of that, and oh my God, when an old man says, "I hurt myself today to see if I still feel," oh,
Ooh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I have this isn't a real thing, but I would love to see it. I would love to see from that point of view Kermit T. Frog sing that song.
Oh,
I'm
now
100% serious. Yeah.
that would be funny. That would be
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. And so instead of like the needle tears the hole, like the needle tears the cloth deal. And
I think
just
you got an
get real
idea
heavy
there.
with it. Yeah. 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 The Muppets sing the songs, and they don't all have to be as dark as that, but yeah.
The
What
secret
what's
addiction of Kermit.
I know, right? Yeah, and I
Yeah.
have some friends that do great versions of it. It would be awesome just to have the Muppets do this, you know, Rick Rubin-esque American recording things. One of my friends is a guy named Chris Thomas King. You've probably seen his work. He was the guitar player at the Crossroads in Oh Brother Art, though, the one real musician
Okay.
in that. Okay.
Okay.
So he's written a really fantastic book about the history of the blues. And he's like, hey, listen, there are two Mississippi deltas. One of them happens to be down in New Orleans. That's the one where the music came from. And he posits that uh, they were a bunch of Harvard, anthropologists who wanted it to be slave people went out and found people to justify their story. And he's like, that's not true.
Oh,
Here's how this all goes down. And it's fascinating, to think about. And his book is great. He's a great guest. But one of the things he says, and you'll appreciate this because you play trumpet among other things, like nothing was amplified back in the
hmm,
late 1800s, early 1900s. And so Buddy Bolden was the first thing you heard when you came into town. And when you were on a barge bringing a load of cotton down, and then you get paid, where are you going to go? You're going to go out to the French Quarter,
yeah,
and you're
yeah,
going to go crazy out there. And it was the trumpets, it was the brass that could be heard, so you knew to go like and it was the way to amplify what happened. And those guys made so much. You can imagine like what you and I would do if we got off a barge and we're like, I just want to go have a good time, and
yeah,
they've got women you can buy and all that kind of thing. And so these musicians just made so much money. They didn't even care if there was a real world outside of that because they were in the best world possible.
yeah.
Just craziness, And so Jelly Roll Morton and all these guys, and he said a great thing to me, because Jelly Roll has sort of denied his legacy and like, oh, he invented jazz. No, he didn't. It's like he actually invented blues, rock and roll with all those guys from that era playing in these whorehouses and trap, all these different houses that they were in. And the thing is that, oh, Jelly Roll was too young to be that good. And then Chris would say, how old was Mozart when he was traveling the world?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, five or
Yeah.
six when he,
Right.
when that
Yeah.
talent already showed up.
Right. And so he's like, why couldn't a black guy do that? And you're like,
Yeah,
you know what?
exactly.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, he
I
did.
guess he was doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
family like disowned him. Oh, you're out there and the whorehouse is playing music. Yep. And then they're like, get out. So
Yeah.
I mean, he should be celebrated, based upon what he said. Have you ever heard his recording, Jelly Roll Morton's recordings, when they sat
yeah.
down and did the whole thing? Those things are remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. And you just think, where's this coming from?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just so fresh and so different, and it's combining the folk music of the time with some of the European stuff. So it really is a new, an amalgam of these different cultures coming together, and it produces a brand new style of music. It's incredible.
I think there's something that happens too. If you're one of those people that is just born to play music and you start playing it early, your hands develop a different dexterity on the keys where you didn't, you were built that way. And so you just can do things that other people can't.
Yeah. That nervous system too, like someone like Keith Jarrett, right? I mean, you can practice all you want, but you'll never be that good. There was something about the way he was built that allowed just this unbelievable control and unbelievable, power to control the piano.
We're at an hour. You got another couple of minutes for me?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. One of the things that Chris talks about too, when I had him on the show, was like the early recorded music is so hard to listen to. It just doesn't. It's not euphonious. He's like, well, that's because there was no high fidelity. You're used to a full, rich sound. They had to stay in a narrow band, and that was all that was possible. And it all had to go into not the same track. It had to go into the same groove, and so there was just not enough space. He's like, if you would have heard these guys live, you would have heard music that you recognize.
Yeah, I mean the technology was just so bad. Even when they recorded, right, when they had those big cones, that the mixing happened by distance from the cone. So they always put the drums way in the back, and that's why on those recordings you hardly can hear the drums. And everybody else is staggered, right, according to how loud their instrument is. I mean, it was primitive stuff. And just grinding it into a disc like that, and then you play it back. Yeah, you can kind of hear it, but boy, that technology got a lot better quickly, though.
Amazing to them, I'm sure. Right,
yeah.
But the innovation starts immediately. Like, how do we get a thinner needle? How do we, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you may not know this though. It's a funny story. At first, they didn't have the ability to make a master recording and then make copies of it. So I forget who the singer was. Every record was unique, so he had to make each record to sell it.
Wow.
There was one singer, I forget who it was, who sang the same tune 100,000 times and made records with it. So that's how they sold the records. That's how primitive it was early on. It's crazy to think about that.
Yeah, it is crazy to think about that. I mean, the amount of work, and then, just the color that you got. Oh, I got this one from the 1952, whatever one, whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. Just to everybody watching, I don't know if you guys know this, but a guy named Jelly Roll Morton did these recordings for the Library of Congress, and he basically did his autobiographical talking and playing at the same time. So they got like a little metronome, and he's like playing. And he's like, and so while he's playing, he's telling these intricate stories. And it's amazing just to hear him and the music he's playing is based upon the theme. So maybe he's playing, Buddy Bolden, Buddy Bolden Says, whatever that. But he also sometimes is just playing along, and they're remarkable. They're on YouTube. I'll put a link up from one of them on here so you guys can check them out.
Yeah, check that stuff out. It's great.
Oh my gosh, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's inspiring too to hear. Like, we don't know much about that early part of the 1900s and the late 1800s, where he and his friends were just inventing stuff. But It's amazing. So I'll put that link on here. But more importantly, there's Kurt's link down below. You can go to his website and make sure you check out his stuff. Before we wrap this up, Kurt, is there anything else you want to get into? Anything else you want to plug besides the website?
No, that's where all my music is. I have a jazz theory book that's on Amazon if anyone's interested in that kind of thing. And also, I'm a contributing editor at All About Jazz, and that's where you can find all my articles like why is Christmas music jazzy? Why is a minor chord sad? You can find all of that stuff there. That's allaboutjazz.com.
I love it. I'm going to put this up here. You guys know how to go on to Amazon, but I'm just going to put this link up here just to get you close to the mark. Plenty of stuff there to pick from. So there you go. There's the link. Oops, that's the YouTube link again. So don't go to that, but also go to this right here. Here we go. Here's the link that you need. Kapow. And as soon as I get control of this enter button, that'll be up there too. All right. Anything in closing before you wrap this up, Kurt? And thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. Please come back. I love talking music.
Oh yeah, like I've said before, I love talking about music. So thanks for having me on. It's kind of fun to just go from one topic to the other and just kind of explore and find stuff to talk about that's music related. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Thanks. I'll say goodbye to you in a second off mic. Everybody else, I will talk to you probably tomorrow. I think we got one show, maybe two. I'll see y'all later.